I never believed in magic. Not really. Growing up in the small town of Millbrook, where the most exciting thing that happened was the annual harvest festival, I thought stories of enchanted forests and mystical beings were just tales to entertain children on cold winter nights. I was wrong. So terribly, wonderfully wrong. My name is Eleanor Thorne, and this is my confession. The truth about what happened to me in the evil forest, and how a weeping tree changed the entire trajectory of my existence. The evil forest. That's what everyone in Millbrook called it, though I suspect its real name had been lost to time and superstition. It sprawled across the eastern border of our town, a dense tangle of ancient oaks and twisted pines that seemed to swallow the sunlight whole. As children, we were warned never to venture past the wooden markers that separated the safe world from whatever lurked within those shadowed depths. Nothing good comes from the evil forest, my grandmother used to say, her weathered hands trembling as she made the sign of protection. Those who enter either don't return, or they come back changed, and not in ways that are good for the soul. I should have listened to her. But fate, I've learned, has a peculiar sense of humor. It was my 23rd birthday when everything changed, a day that should have been filled with cake and celebration, but instead began with catastrophe. My younger brother Thomas had been missing since dawn. My mother was frantic, my father grim-faced as he organized search parties. And then old Mrs. Weatherby, who lived on the outskirts of town, came forward with information that made my blood run cold. She'd seen Thomas that morning, she said. Seen him walking deliberately toward the evil forest, his face blank, his steps measured and strange, as if he were sleepwalking. Or being called. Without thinking, without planning, I grabbed my coat and ran. The search parties were still organizing, debating strategy and safety protocols, but I couldn't wait. Thomas was only 15. He was my responsibility when our parents worked, my shadow since he could walk. I had to find him. The wooden markers loomed before me, weathered posts carved with symbols I didn't understand, warnings perhaps, or wards against evil. I hesitated for only a moment before stepping over the invisible line that separated the known world from the forbidden one. The change was immediate and unmistakable. The air grew thick, almost syrupy, carrying the scent of moss and decay and something else, something ancient and alive. The sounds of Millbrook faded behind me until all I could hear was the whisper of wind through leaves and the crunch of my own footsteps on the forest floor. "Thomas!" I called out, my voice sounding small and fragile. "Thomas, where are you?" No answer came, only the mocking echo of my own desperation. I pushed deeper into the forest, following what might have been a path or might have been merely the spaces between trees. Time behaved strangely here. I couldn't tell if I'd been walking for minutes or hours. The light filtering through the canopy remained constant, a perpetual twilight that made my skin prickle with unease. That's when I heard it, a sound so unexpected, so profoundly wrong that I stopped in my tracks. Someone was crying, not the desperate sobs of a lost child or the quiet weeping of grief. This was different. It was a sound of ancient sorrow, of pain that had endured for centuries, deep and resonant and somehow wooden, as if the earth itself were mourning. I found it in a clearing I'm certain hadn't existed moments before. The tree stood alone, massive and magnificent and terrible. Its trunk was wider than my father's barn, its bark twisted into patterns that resembled faces frozen in anguish. Its branches reached toward the sky like desperate arms, and from somewhere within its heartwood came that sound, that impossible, soul-wrenching crying. But it wasn't just the sound that stopped me. The tree was weeping. Actual tears, clear as crystal, glowing faintly with their own inner light, ran down its bark in rivulets, pooling at its roots where the ground had become soft and muddy. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to flee this impossible thing and return to the safe, mundane world where trees didn't cry and forests weren't evil. But I was transfixed. And somewhere in that weeping, I heard something else. Words, maybe, or thoughts that bypassed my ears entirely and spoke directly to my soul. "Help me," the tree seemed to say. "Please, I am bound, I am broken, I am lost. I'm looking for my brother," I whispered, not sure why I was talking to a tree. "Have you seen him? A boy, 15 years old?" The crying intensified, and suddenly I knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that Thomas had been here, that he'd stood in this very spot, that the tree had taken him. "Give him back," I demanded, anger overriding fear. "Whatever you are, whatever you want, give me back my brother." The tree shuddered, its branches swaying though there was no wind. And then I heard it, truly heard it. Not through my ears, but through something deeper, more fundamental. I did not take him. I saved him. The forest would have claimed him, as it has claimed so many. I offered sanctuary, but sanctuary has a price. What price? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What do you want? Freedom, the tree answered. I was once as you are, human, alive, but I made a choice long ago, and that choice bound me here, transformed me, made me guardian and prisoner both. Your brother sleeps within me, safe from the forest's hunger, but to free him, you must free me. The tree's story poured into my mind like water from a broken dam. Centuries ago, when Millbrook was nothing but a few scattered farms, a young woman named Isadora had entered this forest. She'd been a witch, not the evil, cackling kind from children's stories, but a healer, a wise woman who understood the old magic that still pulsed through the earth. The forest had been dying, corrupted by something dark that had awakened in its depths. The corruption spread like poison, turning animals rabid, making plants toxic, driving travelers mad. Isadora had tried to stop it, to heal the forest as she healed people. But the darkness was too strong, too ancient, too hungry. So she'd made a choice. She'd offered herself as a sacrifice, transforming her very essence into a living ward, a tree whose roots would bind the darkness, whose tears would slowly, over centuries, purify the corruption. She'd saved the forest and everyone who lived near it, but the price was everything she was. Now, after hundreds of years, the darkness was finally contained. But Isadora remained trapped, unable to complete her transformation, unable to move on to whatever came after death. She was stuck in an eternal limbo of pain and purpose, weeping tears that were slowly losing their power as her strength faded. I am dying, she told me. Not quickly, but inevitably. And when I finally fade, the darkness I've held back will be free once more, unless someone takes my place, unless someone chooses to become what I became. No, I said immediately. There has to be another way. There is, she interrupted. But it requires 3 things: a willing heart, a true sacrifice, and the breaking of the original spell. Your brother wandered here by accident, drawn by my distress. I pulled him inside myself to protect him from the forest's remnants. To free him and free me both, you must be willing to face the darkness I've held back, to venture to its source, and to destroy the spell anchor that binds me to this form. Where is it? I asked. This anchor? At the heart of the evil forest, where the corruption first began, in a place called the Hollow. But Eleanor, and hearing my name in that ancient voice sent chills down my spine. You should know that others have tried. None have succeeded. The Hollow is defended by the remnants of the darkness, by fears made manifest, by illusions that prey on weakness. It will show you your worst nightmares. It will offer you your greatest desires. It will try everything to stop you. I looked at the tree, at the faces in its bark that might have been Isadora's features, twisted by centuries of anguish. I thought of Thomas, sleeping somewhere inside this wooden prison. I thought of my grandmother's warnings, my mother's tears, the safe and simple life waiting for me back in Millbrook. Then I thought of all the others who might wander into this forest in the years to come, all the people who might be lost if the darkness broke free again. Tell me what to do, I said. Isadora guided me deeper into the forest, her voice a whisper in my mind, her tears lighting the way like bioluminescent markers. The path she showed me wound through parts of the forest that seemed older than old, where the trees grew so close together that I had to squeeze between them, where mushrooms glowed with sickly light and the air tasted of copper and regret. I saw things in that darkness that I can't fully describe, shadows that moved with predatory intelligence, flowers that sang in voices almost human, a stream that ran uphill, its water black as ink. The forest was testing me, I realized, showing me wonders and horrors in equal measure, trying to determine if I was worthy of reaching the Hollow. The first true test came in the form of my father. He appeared on the path ahead of me, looking exactly as he had the morning I'd left, worried, exhausted, aged beyond his years by fear for his children. Eleanor, he said, his voice breaking. Eleanor, come home. Thomas is gone. We've accepted it. Don't make us lose you too. My heart clenched, but Isadora's voice cut through the illusion. Not real. The forest reads your fears. It shows you what might stop you. You're not my father, I said, forcing strength into my voice. My father would never give up on Thomas, and he'd never ask me to abandon my brother. The figure flickered, its face distorting into something not quite human, before dissolving into mist. The second test was subtler. I found myself in a clearing where a feast had been laid out. Roasted meats, fresh bread, fruits I'd never seen before. My stomach growled. I realized I hadn't eaten since the previous night, and I had no idea how long I'd been walking. Clever, Isadora murmured. It offers sustenance, but everything here exacts a price. Eat the forest's food, and you become part of it. Your quest would end, but so would your humanity. I walked past the feast, my mouth watering, my body protesting, but my will intact. The third test was the cruelest. The forest showed me success. I saw myself emerging from the hollow victorious, the spell broken, Isadora freed, Thomas awakening. I saw us returning to Millbrook as heroes. I saw my mother's tears of joy, my father's proud embrace. I saw the life I could have, marriage, children, happiness. And then the vision shifted. I saw myself decades older on my deathbed, surrounded by grandchildren. I saw a full life, rich and meaningful. All I had to do was turn back now, except that some quests couldn't be completed, some people couldn't be saved. This almost broke me. My step faltered. Tears streamed down my face. But then I thought about Isadora, trapped for centuries, about all the years of life she'd lost, about the sacrifice she'd made, knowing she'd never have the future she'd dreamed of. No, I whispered. Not good enough. Not while others suffer. The vision shattered, and I found myself standing before a cave mouth that yawned in the side of a hill like a screaming mouth. The hollow. The cave was alive with malevolence. I could feel it the moment I stepped inside, a pressure against my skin like the weight of deep water. The walls seemed to pulse with a heartbeat not quite aligned with my own. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the faint glow of Isadora's tears, which I'd collected in a vial she'd formed from her own bark. The anchor is at the center, she told me. A stone, black as midnight, bound with chains of pure magic. Break the chains, shatter the stone, and my imprisonment ends. But the darkness will fight you every step of the way. She wasn't wrong. The deeper I went, the more the cave changed. The walls began to show me things. Memories, I realized. Isadora's memories. I saw her life before the transformation. A small cottage on the edge of a village, a garden full of healing herbs, patients who came to her for help, a man she'd loved, who'd asked her to marry him the very day she'd learned about the forest's corruption. I saw her choice, the agony of it, saying goodbye to everything she'd ever wanted, walking into the forest alone, knowing she'd never leave, performing the ritual that had bound her to the earth, that had slowly, painfully transformed her flesh into wood, her blood into sap, her tears into the purifying magic that had saved countless lives. This is what sacrifice means, she whispered. Not the grand gesture in the moment, but the endless days and nights that follow, living with what you've lost. Why show me this? I asked, my own tears mingling with the glow from the vial. Because you need to understand what you're fighting for. And because I need someone to remember. When I'm gone, I need someone to know that I existed, that I loved, that I chose. The cave opened into a vast chamber, and there, in the center, was the anchor. It was exactly as she'd described, a stone the size of a human heart, black and pulsing with sickly light, wrapped in chains that seemed to be made of solidified shadow. But surrounding it were the guardians. They took the form of my deepest fears. My mother screaming at me that Thomas's death was my fault. My father turning away in disgust. Thomas himself, older and broken, telling me I'd ruined his life by saving it. And at the center, myself, a twisted version that showed me who I might become if I failed, if I gave in to despair, if I let darkness win. None of you are real, I said, but my voice shook. They are as real as you make them, Isadora warned. Belief gives them power. Doubt feeds them. You must find certainty within yourself, not in my mission or your brother's safety, but in who you are. Who was I? In that moment, surrounded by manifestations of my own fear and self-loathing, I wasn't sure. I was just Eleanor Thorne, a girl from a small town who'd never done anything remarkable. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't special. I was just someone who loved her brother and couldn't abandon someone in need. And maybe, I realized, that was enough. I am Eleanor Thorne, I said, my voice growing stronger. I am afraid. I am uncertain. I am probably going to fail, but I'm here anyway, and that matters. My imperfections don't disqualify me from trying. They make me human. And humanity, real, flawed, persistent humanity, is what broke through to Isadora in the first place. The guardians wavered, their forms becoming less solid. I don't have to be perfect, I continued, speaking now not just to them, but to myself. I just have to care enough to try. I just have to keep moving forward one step at a time, even when I'm terrified. Especially when I'm terrified. I walked toward the anchor, and the guardians dissolved like smoke. The chains resisted at first, burning my hands when I touched them. But I held on, pouring every ounce of determination I had into breaking them. I thought of Isadora's sacrifice, of Thomas's trust, of every person who'd ever fought against impossible odds because it was the right thing to do. The first chain snapped with a sound like breaking bones. The second followed. The third, the fourth. When the final chain broke, the stone itself cracked down the middle and an explosion of light and shadow erupted from it. I was thrown backward, my head striking the cave floor. The last thing I heard before darkness took me was Isadora's voice, filled with something I hadn't heard from her before. Joy. Thank you. Thank you. You are free now. We both are. I woke to daylight and the sound of crying. Real, human crying. Thomas was kneeling beside me, his face streaked with tears and dirt, his hands gripping mine. Eleanor! Eleanor, please wake up. Please don't be dead. Not dead, I managed to croak. Just dramatic. He laughed, a sound halfway between relief and hysteria, and pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. We were no longer in the hollow. We were in the clearing where I'd first found the crying tree, but the tree itself had changed. It was still massive, still ancient, but the faces in the bark were at peace now. The tears had stopped. And standing beside it, translucent and fading but smiling, was a young woman in old-fashioned clothes. Isadora. You did it, she said, her voice clear now, no longer filtered through wood and magic. You freed us both. The darkness is gone, truly gone this time. The forest will heal naturally now. And I can finally rest. Wait, I said, struggling to my feet. Before you go, what happened to you? Where will you go? She smiled, and in that smile I saw centuries of pain finally ending. Somewhere better, somewhere I've earned. And Eleanor, you've changed your fate. You came here seeking your brother, but you found something else. Purpose, strength, the knowledge that you're capable of more than you ever imagined. Use it well. She faded then, like morning mist under the sun, and the tree itself began to change. It didn't die or fall. Instead, it transformed, becoming a normal oak, magnificent but no longer magical, no longer burdened with impossible purpose. Thomas and I made our way back to Millbrook, guided by paths that seemed to appear beneath our feet. The forest was different now, still dense, still wild, but no longer evil. Just a forest, with all the beauty and danger that implies. Our return caused a sensation. Search parties had been scouring the area for 2 days, our parents had been frantic, and the entire town had gathered to pray for our safe return. When we emerged from the tree line, hand in hand and filthy but alive, the rejoicing could be heard for miles. But I was changed. Isadora was right about that. The weeks and months that followed were strange. On the surface, life returned to normal. I worked in my father's shop. I attended the harvest festival. I smiled and laughed and pretended that everything was the same as it had always been. But inside, I carried the weight of what I'd experienced. I knew now that magic was real, that impossible choices sometimes had to be made, that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they had to. I also carried Isadora's story, just as she'd asked. I wrote it down, every detail I could remember. I wanted the world to know about a young woman who'd given up everything to save people she'd never meet, who'd endured centuries of pain without complaint, who'd never been thanked or recognized or even remembered, until now. Thomas never spoke about what happened to him inside the tree. He said he slept, dreaming of a woman's voice singing lullabies in a language he didn't understand. He woke when I broke the chains and remembered the way out. That was all. But he changed too. He became more thoughtful, more aware of the choices we make and their consequences. As for me, I found that I couldn't settle back into my old life. The town that had seemed like my whole world now felt too small. I began to study the old magic, seeking out the few people who still remembered it. I learned about healing herbs and protective wards. I became, in my own small way, what Isadora had been. Someone who stood between the ordinary world and the extraordinary one, trying to keep them in balance. People started coming to me for help. Small things at first, a fever that wouldn't break, nightmares that plagued a child, a sense of wrongness in a newly built house. I helped where I could, using the knowledge I'd gained and the strength I'd discovered in myself. And sometimes, on quiet nights, I visit the oak tree that used to be Isadora. I sit beneath its branches and tell it about my day, about the people I've helped, about the small victories and frequent failures that make up a life dedicated to service. I like to think she can still hear me somehow, that some part of her remains, not trapped, but peacefully intertwined with the earth she saved. I like to think she's proud of what I've become. So that's my confession. I found a crying tree in the evil forest, and it changed my fate forever. I learned that magic is real, that sacrifice has power, that ordinary people can choose to do extraordinary things. I discovered that I'm stronger than I knew, braver than I believed, and capable of more than I imagined. The forest isn't called evil anymore. Some people call it the healing wood now, or simply the old forest. The darkness is gone, purified by centuries of tears and one desperate act of courage. Children play at its edges without fear. Travelers pass through safely. And somewhere within it, a tree stands as a monument to a woman whose name most people have forgotten. But I remember. And through this confession, now you will too. Isadora taught me that our fates aren't written in stone, that we can change them through choice and courage and the willingness to sacrifice for something greater than ourselves. She spent centuries as proof of that truth, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring it. Because I found a crying tree in a forest, and it showed me who I could become, and I chose to become her.